Hello, cartoon model kit builders. So we have another World War Toons tank. It's number 15, and it's made by a company called Meng. This is the Porsche version of the Tiger tank. So what happened is back in 1941, the war effort in Germany asked Henschel and Porsche to design a new 45-ton heavy tank. And Porsche designed a hybrid system where it had two V10 gas engines, but they're driving electric motors. The problem is the war effort didn't have enough copper to have hybrid vehicles. That copper was being used in submarines. So Henschel won out just running a regular, petrol-powered tank. So Porsche did bake a bunch of these though because they just assumed they were going to win the contract, I guess. So it turns out this thing in real life became 60 tons, well past the 45. And they built 10 of them, and then they built an extra 90 hulls. And those hulls were later converted to Ferdinand tank destroyers, and I think a Bergpanzer as well, which is a recovery vehicle. Alright, so I'm just reading Wikipedia, so I'm trying to give you guys the box while I'm reading this stuff. The cannon itself is the 88, the Flak 88, and basically it's an anti-aircraft cannon, but they put it into these tanks. The armor was between 20 to 100 millimeters thick, which is almost 4 inches thick. And then its maximum speed was around 35 kilometers an hour or 22 miles per hour. Okay, so that's what we know now about the Porsche Tiger. Alright, some sort of Chinese approval thing. So you have these real rubbery tracks, but what I found is paint doesn't want to stick to rubber so much. So if you're going to actually have it as a toy and you want to actually rotate the tracks, you might not even want to bother painting these things. But the tracks look nicer than the other model, the Stuart tank I made. Far more details in them. So I think you could actually get paint in there. Maybe it won't fall out so easily because it's such deep crevices. Then we have this gray. Let's see if it's wavy or requires painting over. I gotta say, these Meng company does a good job with their plastic. I don't see a lot of wavy lines that I'd find even in a Bandai model kit. So, yeah, there's no weird lines where the plastic meets itself. So whoever designed these molds seems to know what they're doing. Here's the hull. There's a little extra molding sprue there, and there's molded in branding. So if you ever get this outside of the packaging, you know what it is. Although it doesn't tell you what the tank is. If you're going to take the effort to write all this stuff, why wouldn't you also tell us what the tank is, right? So if someone just picks it up, they'll realize, oh, this is the VK-45 tank. Alright, well, it's definitely bigger than the other model kit I built. The M5 Stuart is a light tank, and this is a heavy tank, so I guess there's a little bit of scaling in this thing. This part broke loose on its own, so be careful when you open this bag. Don't do it on a shaggy carpet or you'll never find the parts. One thing I did complain about in my first build is these decals are placed so close to each other. Like, in particular, these marking numbers, those become decals also. So you want to cut those out or they might mess up your real decal. I wish all this stuff was spread apart more, right? I don't know why they, don't have more space between them so they're easier to cut out. Okay, let's take a look quickly at this thing here. Nice little illustration. Yeah, very straightforward. No glue necessary, just all friction fit. And if you follow the instructions, it should be pretty easy to do. I'm not sure why they use this weird script though. It's a funky font. Makes it difficult. So literally there's 4 steps in this particular model kit, right? Or actually, maybe not. I don't know. Hull steps. Alright, there's maybe 10 steps if I had to guess, somewhere in that ballpark. It's nice to give you some painting ideas. I'm going to probably just go with this gray scheme, since my other one was green. So as usual, I'm gonna fast forward this, put it to some music. You can slow it down if you actually want to watch it, or just skip to the end for the review. And we're back after many hours again. If I had to guess, maybe 6 hours. The actual model kit is really easy to put together. It's just all the weathering takes forever. Probably 4 hours of weathering, maybe. You know, maybe an hour just to clean up the parts, an hour to put it together, and then 6 to in total. One thing I do want to note, you know, during the build, there's one major issue that you're going to run into, I think, if you build this thing. It's the turret. Well, I guess I don't have to take it. Well, I do have to take it apart to show you the problems. Hold on. Where's the? It's supposed to be 90 degrees. Oh, look at this. Wait a second. Oh, you have to actually move the turret up to clear these round things, because it's 90-degree key. All right. On the bottom here, you can see the parting line. This turret is molded in 2 halves. You know, this is the split line here. And if you don't glue this together before you put the top on, you might have a problem, because this is what I did. I put the 2 halves together with this piece here, holding them together. And then I didn't glue it, so I just put the top on, and it didn't rest evenly. So it's really hard to see, but it's a little bit off. This side of the turret is a little bit higher than this side. You can see this side's a little lower, and this side is lower than that side, because it's a little bit like this, right? So I couldn't take it apart because, look, this is a solid plate. I couldn't push the top out. This is not the top piece. It's more like in the middle here. So I couldn't pry the top part out without risking damage to the plastic. So I had to just continue on with it. So I couldn't actually. I was a little bit lazy. I didn't put enough putty in here to cover up the crease, and so I ended up using 2 decals. There's a big parting line here still, so I used a decal to cover it up. But you can, you know, see here, if this side is taller than this side, it makes it actually difficult to rotate, and so you can see I'm scratching all my paint because the surface isn't flat anymore. So that's the problem you might run into. And if it's even worse than what I did, it might not even go on at all, because it's such a tight, you know, friction fit. So I just wanted you guys to be aware that you really need to assemble the side pieces, glue them before you put the top piece on, and then everything should be perfectly true, and then this turret will rotate easier and not scratch up your paint. Lucky it's a weathered object, so scratching up the paint isn't too big of an issue. So if you go back to my build, you'll see that I just slapped on a bunch of random colors just with paintbrushes, like a yellow and black, in particular around the vertical sides and the lower sections, because I wanted them to be like artificially shadowed. And then I airbrushed gray over it, and so it's very subtle, but there's a little bit of darkness coming through the gray paint. And then I just used a toothpick or whatnot to literally chip the gray off, you know, and so that's what all this is. It's the extra gray, the extra black, and the gray of the plastic shining through, or I guess not shining through, but it's coming through the gray. And then I used some pigments to add some rust, and then I used a brown Tamiya paint wash, the panel liner. Really, it's not a paint wash, but it might as well be the panel liner, and maybe another wash of some really light yellowish ochre. So yeah, just a lot of weathering layers really got it to this state. And then I clear coated it twice along the process, matte clear coat. And as usual, the rubber tracks are, you know, kind of a pain, because it's really easy to scrape off the paint from the rubber. So I don't want to actually touch the sides of these tracks ever again, because it'll just end up being the raw black rubber, which in certain places I guess is fine, but you know, this particular tank has all metal tracks in real life. So a little criticism, I do feel like these wheels, drive wheels, could have been molded with some more detail. They're just perfectly flat on this surface. I feel like they could have easily molded more details like they did on all these other ones, right? So kind of lazy on their part. I did paint the tools here separately, You know, I weathered the body first, and then I put the tools on before the final color washes. And then the very last thing I did was add the silver here for the headlights. I believe, if I'm correct, maybe these should have been armored lights with a little rectangular slot. If that is the case, that could have easily been molded on Meng's part, but maybe I'm mistaken. Alright, well, hopefully you can see, you know, the weathering. And then, yeah, save the antenna for last, because you're going to break it if you put it on and do any weathering. So I never glue my antennas. In fact, I had to scrape off a lot of plastic in this antenna because it was such a tight fit, even without paint. So, yeah, save your antenna for last. But these two I did put on because they're a little bit protected, so I don't think they would break during the weathering process. So as you already saw, the turret can go up and down a tiny, tiny bit. Well, actually, I guess that's pretty good for down. And I guess that's up, which is, I guess, pretty realistic. It's not an artillery vehicle, right? But yeah, now we learned you gotta raise the turret if you want to clear that thing. Okay. And then I did drill out the machine gun with the little pin drill. So I think that's it for the mods and the process that I went through. 6 hours if you want it to end up looking like this. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of people weathering realistic tanks, and those guys take several days and weeks. I mean, their models look great, but I'm not going to spend several days or weeks on a model. That's just craziness to me. So I think 6 hours is acceptable. You know, you can get it to look pretty weathered, pretty fast. Just don't even care about where you're painting, really. But in general, I try to have, you know, the washes and the rust pool around the edges and the hinges and stuff, you know, where I think water would actually pool up on a vehicle. So even though I had a bunch of rust here, I wiped it off because, you know, if it rained, it would just run off that surface, you know. But anywhere where there's corners, that's where you want your weathering to build up. And then any sort of scratching, I generally do on the edges, and then where I think people might be walking around, you know, walking around these hatches or getting up here or getting up here, that kind of stuff. So I only have one other tank, and that's the M5 Stuart light tank. So this is a heavy tank. The Germans made the heaviest tanks. Even the American heavy tanks weren't, I don't think, as big as 60 tons or heavy as 60 tons. So it's quite interesting that it seems like these are actually proportional in a rough way, right? So I'm missing a medium tank. That might be my next build. I'll have to try to get one of those, and then we'll see the comparison. But it makes sense, at least the scaling of these two. And so if you are curious, let's see. The overall hull length of this is around 11 centimeters, whereas this light tank is around 8 centimeters. So, yeah, interesting. And then the width-wise, look at the difference here. 8 centimeters wide, and then this is only 5. It's even under 5 centimeters. Yeah. So maybe this is like, I don't know, 60% or something, 70% the size of this guy, and I think that makes sense. Being light tank versus a heavy tank. Alright, well, I guess you can watch the video of that M5 Stuart separately if you want. And let's finish this guy off here with the good old slow rotation. And I got my little Bandai Blocken Junior figure here. This looks kind of like a German, actually. So these are really fun, you know. My next one, I'm not sure if I'm going to put more time in weathering or less time. I'm trying to really just get to a point where I can weather them as fast as possible because I just really don't like building model kits. But the end result is great. I really like these tuned tanks. I suppose they could have even made it more tuned. If they only had two wheels down here, they could have shaved off like even a bit more off the rear end. It would look even more tuned. But maybe they made it this big because they wanted it in proportion with the other tanks, you know, size-wise. So thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next World War II's Meng tank video. Bye.